Really quickly on TCU, Michigan, I'm like a lot of people. I think when I look at this game, I think there are two divergent thoughts that I have. Michigan, a 7.5-point favorite, by the way, in the Betfred Sportsbook. Game is in Glendale, Arizona at the Cardinal Stadium. And when I look at this game, what stands out to me is that like I said, two different divergent thoughts on this game. I think the first thought that I have is probably the thought that all you guys and girls have, which is Michigan's bigger, they're more powerful, they're more physical. We've seen them on a big stage. They punked Ohio State. And when you look at the actual matchups in this game, it is hard not to like Michigan to win going away. Again, a 7.5-point favorite in the Betfred Sportsbook. Just think about, when you think about these two teams, think about what advantages would you think Michigan has and what advantages do you think TCU has? Well, Michigan, the advantage, obviously the running game, right? Number 4 rush offense in all of college football. This is a team that on the season averaged 243 yards per game on the ground. Actually, number 5 behind Air Force, Army, Mississippi, Ole Miss, and UCLA. But 5th ranked rush offense. So you think, okay, advantage Michigan. How are they going to counter that? Well, here's the problem. TCU this season, they finished with the 65th ranked rush defense, bottom half of college football, middle of the pack in the Big 12. Here's the bigger concern. The last time that they played, we all saw them against Kansas State. Kansas State is a team that is built similarly to Michigan, big, strong, physical up front. Kansas State rushed for 205 yards on the ground, 5 yards per carry in that game. So that's one. First advantage, Michigan run game. How does TCU counter? I don't know if they can. So here's the counter to that. Well, what does TCU do well? They have an explosive offense predicated on big plays. This year in college football, TCU ranked 4th nationally in terms of big plays, long scrimmage plays of 30-plus yards per game. The only teams that had more plays of 30-plus yards, Tennessee, North Texas, and Western Kentucky. Then it was TCU. 44 plays of 30 yards or more in 13 games. Not great at math, but that's about 4 per game. Well, here's the problem with that. Michigan is in the top 10 nationally in fewest big plays allowed. So that's where I get tripped up in this game. Michigan's advantage, I don't know how TCU stops it. And then TCU's advantage, well, Michigan might have an answer for that. So that's where I get tripped up on this game. And here's another thing I don't think people are talking about. By the end of the season, Michigan was pretty banged up. And this time away has allowed them to get healthy. I don't think people are talking about this. Donovan Edwards, the star running back who replaced Blake Corum. Remember the last 2 games? He had that big cast on his arm. Well, early bowl prep, when media was allowed, he didn't have a cast on his hand. He seemed good to go. Mike Morris, who was Michigan's best defensive lineman, a guy who missed the Big Ten championship game, a guy who was limited in the Ohio State game earlier this year. He's back. Mike Morris, a guy who was a difference maker up front for this team. Again, all Big Ten, 11 tackles for loss on the season, 7.5 sacks. He barely even played against Ohio State. Well, now he's back healthy. The big center, Olu, I don't even want to pretend to say his last name. He was in a walking boot late after the Ohio State game. He is now fully healthy for this one. So I think I like Michigan. And I'm going to pick Michigan, and that's my official pick. But I do have one last thought that I do want to share. So as you guys and girls know, I love what I do. I'm very grateful. And I'm a little bit of a historian of all things college sports. And the only real thing that does concern me a little bit about this game is this. Doesn't this feel like some of those old Big Ten games from about 15 years ago? Remember all those Big Ten games when Ohio State with Jim Tressel played Florida in the national championship game? And everybody said, how's Florida going to be able to handle the physicality up front of Ohio State? And then you look, and Florida's just way faster, and they're running right by Ohio State on every play. And then the next year, Ohio State gets back to the national championship game. Same story. How is LSU going to handle the physicality of Ohio State? And then LSU just runs right by them. Kind of the same with Georgia, Michigan last year. Well, TCU is obviously super dynamic. They are super athletic. They are a big play offense, as I just discussed. They're actually a pretty balanced offense as well. And what I do worry about, what if we're underselling the big playability of TCU. Quentin Johnson averaged 17 yards per catch, 5 touchdowns. Tay Barber averaged 17 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns. Darius Davis, 5 touchdowns, 12 yards per catch. Savion Williams, 13 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns. What if we're all focused on how does TCU stop Michigan's physicality, and we should be focused on can Michigan stop the big play from TCU? Like I said, though, Michigan this year has been pretty good. Michigan has obviously faced a good offense in Ohio State. And so I'm not ready to make that move yet, but it is something I'm thinking about. But I will take Michigan, and I will take the points in this one. Michigan, a 7.5 point favorite, as I said, in the Betfred Sportsbook.